Yeah, listen, I mean, this is this is the type of player that is the easiest to pay. But I do, and I'm happy for him, and this is, the direction of the market. But I do wonder if it's even possible for a non-quarterback to make this a good value contract. Like, I wonder, if the salary, where the salary cap is, can a non-quarterback provide you $50 million worth of value? I think it's hard. And so what you showed as his production, it has to, which is top 2 pass rusher in the league production, he has to stay there now throughout. Like, that is, and because the market and it's really interesting to me where the market's gone and where it hasn't gone. It is pass rusher, wide receiver, quarterback are the only guys making more than 30, and you have at that position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 wide receivers and pass rushers making more than 40, and obviously, 15 quarterbacks making more than 40. Every other position is stuck at a $30 million ceiling for offensive linemen and corners, or $20 million ceiling for tight ends and running backs. Like, the league is obviously telling us what they value. I just think it is, man, oh man, it is really, really hard to have a guy, someone making quarterback money who's not a quarterback and have that end up paying off for you.
I think that's reasonable in a vacuum for one player, but they were the best defense in football last year.
The legendary defense.
And they're not if you don't have Will Anderson.
Yeah.
And so it is the price to keep him. It is the price of the market. There is no path to them having an elite top 5 offense with C.J. Stroud and with their problems on the offensive line. So you can sign a player to a market rate deal and go into next year with an expectation that we will be the best defense in football. Is some of Will Anderson's production because he's opposite Danielle Hunter, who also was a top 6 pass rusher in the NFL last year?
And also makes $40 million.
I was going to say, he's right there.
Yeah.
But their defense has studs at all 3 levels, all over the place, some making top of market value and some on great contracts. They are just what happened with Pittsburgh last year is what you can't do. You can't have the most expensive defense in football and then not be a good defense. That is the disaster. That is just, you're just in the middle and you've got no path forward. If you've got one of the most expensive defenses and you are the best defense in football, the team that we all said, no one's going to really want to play them in the playoffs. There is a path to this working. It is just tied. I guess my small quibble with you, Nick, is his production needs to be there, but also just the team's success needs to be there.
Yeah.
They need to win a lot of games because of their defense.
So, look, deserving.
100%.
Deserving. And I don't mind it being that it's this player.
He's awesome.
Because when you think about teams, and specifically this team, that defense is what we talk about when we talk about the Houston Texans. If we don't choose to talk about, C.J. Stroud has to be better.
Yeah, if we're talking positively about the Texans.
We're always talking. And so when you think about the literal anchor or pillar, cornerstone of who we are, what we have to win, it's that guy right there. It is not C.J. Stroud. It is not anybody on that offensive side of the ball. That's why you can say, you know what? Yeah, we'll pick up C.J.'s 5th-year option. But we got to make sure we take care of this guy.
We pick up both their 5th-year options, but we pay.
But we pay this guy.
Yeah, this conversation really grabs my attention, and here's why. I keep coming back to Colin's list, the one where he argues that you can't throw massive money at an edge rusher or a wide receiver. He points to their playoff records and says, look, they don't win. And I've gone on my own passionate rants pushing back against that line of thinking. Because if you actually examine any position, when you look at the top 5 or top 10 highest paid players at that spot, they don't tend to win either. The real way to win is by constructing rosters that allow you to spread the money around and structure smart contracts. If you have to pay everyone at the top of the market, if you're setting records for the highest paid player at any position, That usually doesn't work out well for you. It's an enormous amount of capital you have to allocate, and you have to figure out how to manage it. Most teams struggle with that because it's genuinely, really hard. So I don't want to rehash my entire previous rant, but here's the point. If you're DeMeco Ryans, and you're this elite defensive coach, sometimes you have to prove your worth precisely by not paying those types of players. You show your value by finding hidden value in other guys, maybe second, third, or fourth round picks, because you need to support the offense. You need to solve that side of the ball. You need to get the offense moving. Someone said to me recently, "Oh, if the Texans just had a running game, why could win the Super Bowl? It's all about defense and the run game." And I'm thinking, it's way more complicated than that. We can't reduce it to just those two elements. And that was precisely the problem. Because this Texans defense, and I've said this 100 times, was my favorite defense in the league. I kept insisting it was the best defense in the NFL. And I got a lot of pushback, especially from fans of two teams I was very high on, the Seattle Seahawks and the Denver Broncos. Broncos fans in particular were like, no, man. I remember one guy I really respect, he said, "I love you, but you're sleeping on that Broncos defense." And I was like, no, the Texans defense is just insane. I kept describing it as violent, and I meant that in a positive way. Their defense was just so physically overwhelming. And again, just look at what they did to Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen alone. You're just sitting there thinking, my goodness. So many games, so many moments. You hear people say, "Oh, this team has a great defense. That team has a great defense." You see some moments, some games, some quarters, and you get a feel for it. But this was a team where you genuinely thought, this is a great defense. And they rose to the occasion every single time. The other elite defense, the Seattle Seahawks, they also rose to the occasion, right? They made the 49ers look non-existent. They made the New England Patriots look non-existent. And that's awesome. That's great. When you clearly give DeMeco the players and the talent, he's going to produce an elite defense. But the biggest elephant in the room is that you have to figure out this offense. You have to solve this offense. So as much as I support what they're doing, I'm really caught between two worlds here. Because as supportive as I am, I'm also sitting here thinking, what do you actually need to do to make this offense work? And I've said this before, you could make the argument that, let's say this defense is operating at 100%. I'm just making up percentages and numbers for the sake of argument. The defense is at 100%. You could make a strong case that it would be far better for this Texans defense to drop down to 90% if it meant the offense increased by 10%. I'm not saying you have to reduce the defense by exactly 10% in order to elevate the offense. But from a team success standpoint, I think you'd be a better team that way. You need to get more consistent offensive production. You just do. You absolutely, positively do. I believed in the Texans last year, and I was really excited about them. But when it came to a big game, say, having to face the Seattle Seahawks in the Super Bowl, I was like, I don't know about that, man. And we saw why those concerns were valid. And it's not just a matter of, oh, if CJ Stroud just plays better, you can win. Yeah, that's part of it. But you also need to be able to get after it. You need to be able to go out there and compete. As we saw with the Seattle Seahawks and Sam Darnold, you saw the moment when the defense couldn't rise to the occasion against the Los Angeles Rams. You needed big-time plays. Big-time playmaking that wasn't just Sam Darnold. It wasn't just about quarterback play. It was a collection of everyone, Kenneth Walker, Cooper Kupp, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Zach Charbonnet. It was a little bit of everyone. And the Texans don't have that. They just don't have that. And that makes me uncomfortable. Here's another thing I want to emphasize. We'll hear Nick say things like, oh, you can't pay an edge rusher this much money. This is weird. This is interesting. And then Colin comes out with his whole argument about not paying an edge rusher that kind of money. Yet in the draft, all I hear is that every team is trying to find the next big-time player to get after the quarterback. The next edge rusher. Everyone just wants an edge rusher. Everyone wants someone who can pressure the quarterback. And here we are. So it's a weird situation. It's a strange time to try to make sense of what NFL teams actually want. And it's fascinating because I've been on this with the draft. I've said you should do everything you possibly can to find an elite tight end or an elite running back. As Nick showed, those positions top out at around $20 million. Meanwhile, you see edge rushers at $50 million, corners, wide receivers, offensive linemen. If you find that elite tight end or that elite running back, the amount you pay them relative to other positions means they're actually underpaid. Saquon Barkley was underpaid. Christian McCaffrey is underpaid. Travis Kelce throughout his whole career, and Gronk, and Kittle, considering what they bring to a team, what they offer, they are underpaid. Derrick Henry with the Ravens, again, you had 2 running backs who were hitting around 2,000 yards and 1,000,000 touchdowns. I think Derrick Henry got something like $13 million that year, pretty low. And Saquon? I don't know. Let me put it this way, they were more important to winning than Ja'Marr Chase and his $40 million contract or something. So those players had a bigger impact. Saquon Barkley had a significantly bigger impact on winning games than Myles Garrett did. So when you can find greatness at tight end and running back, I think that's the ultimate superpower, because you don't have to pay them $150 million over 3 years. Now, that's easier said than done, of course. But that's actually where my mind has been going in the draft. Although you could also argue that because these other players make so much money, you'd better find the Will Andersons in the draft, because then you don't have to pay them market rate, and you get that value, etc., etc. But yeah. I love this move because I love the Texans' defense. And as much as I say, oh, they could take a step back, and you have to put some of the responsibility on D'Amico, the other side of me also thinks, well, no, just let D'Amico cook. EP building this elite defense, because it's also just so fun to watch, and it obviously helps the Texans. But it also makes me a little uncomfortable, because I'm just sitting here thinking, we have to get this offense going. We have to get this offense going. We have to get this offense going. And no, I don't think just bringing in a David Montgomery is magically going to solve the offense. So yeah. And that's the difficult thing when you're coming off a couple of years with CJ Stroud. If you listen to the Texans, they're very much like, CJ's our quarterback. CJ's our quarterback. CJ's our quarterback. They're not questioning it. They don't doubt it. They're saying it very confidently. Now, don't get me wrong, plenty of owners and general managers have made those same statements, only to go in a completely different direction later. But still, you have to get this offense going. I know I've said this a million times, but you just have to get this offense going. Got to get the offense rolling. Got to get the offense rolling. Got to get the offense rolling. And does this contract get in the way of that? I'm not saying it does, but I'm also not saying it doesn't. Time will tell. Time will tell. I think at the end of the day, any time you have to pay an important player an incredible amount of money, whether it's a quarterback, and I feel this way about quarterbacks too, you run into challenges. For example, the Seattle Seahawks had to pay Jackson Smith-Njigba all that money, and because of it, they had to move on from Kenneth Walker. That's not a move they wanted to make. That's not something they were eager to do. So yeah. This is the aspect of football that I both love the most and hate the most, trying to figure out how to pay these guys. Because again, I want these players to get paid. I want them to earn generational wealth and all of that. They deserve it. They're owed it. But at the same time, trying to build a team and make sense of how to make all these contracts work and what's possible, it's just hard. It's hard. And it's great that it's hard, because it's hard for teams too. It's hard for teams, and it's supposed to be hard. That's why it's difficult to keep winning, because you do have to make tough decisions. That's why the Chiefs had to move on from Tyreek Hill, etc., etc. Those things matter, and that's awesome. And I know Cincinnati Bengals fans will say, oh, it's Joe Burrow's fault for wanting Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins. And I'm like, no, it's not. Because they've shown no ability to draft and develop other players, or work free agency, etc., etc. Then I'll point to a team like the Rams, or the Eagles, or the 49ers. They pay a lot of guys a lot of money, and they're able to make it work. So don't tell me that the Bengals' problems are simply because they paid Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins, and that's why they can't build a good defense. That's absolute nonsense. Complete nonsense. But the way you make a contract like this work is through guaranteed money, signing bonuses, and void years. I haven't seen the details yet, I don't know if they've been released. But if they structured this contract as 3 years, $150 million, with 2 void years or something like that, that makes it a lot easier. If they didn't, well, then that's your owner. That's your team being willing to pay top dollar, but your owner not being willing to put up the cash that makes a contract this big much less of a cap hit. And that'll be interesting to see, how it's structured. I haven't seen it yet. Because from what I've seen with no void years, that's what hurts you more. He got something like a $30 something million signing bonus. They could have turned that into an $80 million signing bonus. Then you do it with void years. You have to front that money now, but the salary cap hit becomes way more forgiving. From what I'm looking at, from what I've seen so far, and maybe more information will come out, this looks like a straight-up, true quarterback level salary cap hit right now. And in fact, a lot of the time, with quarterback contracts, even if you sign a $55 million or $60 million per year deal, because they always use void years, you don't actually take that same cap hit. Son Jr. paid? Let me know your thoughts. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get into some discussions. Let's get into some debates. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. Please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here. I'd absolutely love to see you be part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. It really does help with visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.